Hello and welcome to another edition of The Hurry Up. I'm your host, Andre Dixon, joined by my friends, my pals, my amigos. Sam Morgan, how are you, sir?
Another week, another win. I'm great.
Smugness has got to stop, I'll tell you. George from X's and O's, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm doing well. Another loss for the Colts, 3. But, let's focus on the positives. Let's talk some good NFL stuff.
I am well staying away from my stuff. Hannah Wilkes from Sky Sports NFL. How are you, my love?
I am very well, thank you. 3-0 and beating the reigning champions on a Sunday night, and feeling good about it, even many days after the fact. And thank you for not bringing up the Giants, because I said to you before we start recording, can you just leave it because it's boring? Like, we don't care. No one cares.
There's no sympathy for me whatsoever. But you know what? Like, I'm sick of them too, so I'm gonna, get on the LA bandwagon, but we'll talk about that just now.
Come join the Ramily.
I'm all Rams down, definitely for sure. Obviously, Matthew Stafford has been lighting it up. He's been amazing. 3-0 for the Rams. Now, is it too early to anoint Matthew Stafford as the king of the NFC West? I will start with Sam because you are looking disheveled.
Say that again. Are you trying to put Stafford as the king of the NFC West? What side of the bed or part of your head did you hit this morning with that question? Not a chance. Not a chance. Have you seen what Kyler's been doing? And I'm not just trying to be a fanboy. Have you seen what he's been doing? Yeah, Stafford. Listen, we knew Stafford was good, but there's too many big quarterbacks in that league. 2-2.
So that's a homer no from Sam.
George. Let me just say this. He has been very good. And we talked about this when he moved to the Rams. He's a very good QB. But the king? No. And I tell you what, not just Kyler, I still think you've got to look at Wilson as still the king of the NFC West. Let's not disrespect Wilson just yet. And he's your the major fanboy, Dre.
I love Russell.
Let's not dethrone him yet.
But you know what I must say? Stafford has been lights out, and I think that there's been a lot of doubt, and he had a lot of pressure on him before he came because people are saying, okay, you're just a good quarterback on a bad team. So now he's leading very well. But George, like, what say you, sir?
So I think Sam's got a point. Kyle is great. Russell Wilson is greater, but I don't think people were expecting what we're seeing from Stafford. It's the same face on the new team, right? They're 3-0 against 3 playoff teams as well. This is a new offense for Stafford. It's not something he's done before. I think he's slightly underrated. When he was at the Lions, they kind of wasted him. I know he's had Megatron and guys of the like, but he's not really had the weapons on offense or a defense for him to get him on a good position on the field. Now he's with the Rams in LA. The guy's put up 913 passing yards. They don't have much of a running game, and you saw it in the Bucs game. They didn't have much of a running game, but they were still able to almost dethrone Brady. I know he's still got the Super Bowls, but you can see that they've put in work, right? You've got Kupp is healthy. He hasn't been healthy for a while, and you can see the connection. I don't know if you've heard, but Kupp and Stafford have been having breakfast together. You can tell.
They like each other.
They like each other, exactly. Yeah. They've got the connection, right? You've got Tyler Higbee, who's putting in work. You've got Aaron Donald, and you've obviously got Jalen Ramsey on the defense who are playing lights out. McVay, on top of all of that, I mean, you see him celebrating with Robert Woods when he scored that touchdown down the field. I love everything they're doing. I think they're amazing. But in terms of being the king of the NFC West, I don't think so quite yet. But the other guys should probably look over their shoulder.
Hannah, rep your team.
I initially thought you said, is Stafford the new king of the NFC? And I thought that was hyperbolic. And then with it being the NFC West, I still think that's hyperbolic. I mean, look, he hasn't actually played a divisional game yet, so ask me again in 2 weeks because it's 2 coming back to back now. Like the guys have said, we knew he was a good quarterback in Detroit. We just couldn't see what he was truly capable of. Now he's surrounded by this solid group of players, and they're all just balling out. One quarterback from the NFC West, of course I'm going to pick Stafford because it's a homer pick, because I'm a Ram fan. And also because right now he is the hottest hand in the NFC West, but Russell Wilson is not done. No. It just means right now Matthew Stafford is the guy that's got it going, and that's as much to do with the guys around him as anything else. I mean, think back this time last year, we were all on the Russell Wilson MVP hype train, and look how that turned out down the stretch. Yes, when it comes to king of the NFC West, I'm ignoring Jimmy Garoppolo, and I am ignoring Kyler Murray because frankly he's too young to be king. You need someone with a sound head on their shoulders. To what George said as well, and also he's a bit small for a king, and I feel like bad things happen when short guys run things.
Oh wow, that's a hot take.
It's clearly a shot at Sam in more ways than one.
Oh yeah, Mr. Giant over there. Mr. Giant.
Hey, I'm a tall girl. I've felt the wrath of short people, short men in particular. But look, the Rams are obviously the big team to beat in the NFC West. Yes, the Cardinals are also 3-0. But until Sunday evening, I will remain unconvinced about the Cardinals because you've played the Titans, the Vikings, and the Jaguars. But you can't crown a king in week 3, and you can't crown a king in a game that is a team game. And yes, the quarterback is arguably the most influential one position in any sport, let alone American football. But if we're giving out crowns to Rams, Aaron Donald needs a crown, Jalen Ramsey needs a crown, Cooper Kupp needs a crown, Sean McVay and his endless energy need a crown, but it's only week 3, so it's completely irrelevant until February when they all get rings.
Wow. We are gonna. No, don't worry. We're gonna celebrate while we can. You know, the Rams doing very well. I mean, like obviously, you guys obviously know that you're going to be facing, your teams are going to be facing each other over this weekend. Just quickly, sensible non-homer picks. Sam, who have you got for the game on Sunday?
It's only going to be homer picks.
I know.
I mean, yeah, it's only going to be a homer pick. Well, for us though, for the Cardinals, generally, I'm not bothered about the run game of the Rams. I think if we can stop, I'm obviously go on the pass rush properly. If everyone's not too banged up, I actually think we got a good chance. Our biggest issue, and this is where we won't win the game, is the penalties. Cardinals give away far too many penalties.
Way too many. Yeah,
if we can bring that down a little bit, just even a fraction, I think we win the game. But this is where obviously I give the Rams and McVoy his little 2 pence, shall we say, is that they are disciplined in comparison to other teams. And that's what gets them the W at the end of the day. I think they stay disciplined for it. We don't. But this will be a shootout. This is a game to watch for sure. But by the way, I'm not sitting on the fence. We are going to win. Just saying.
The thing is, Sam, you're so right, because penalties just kill teams. They kill coaches. That's why I call them coach killers. They kill fans because it's hard enough. You don't want to get in your own way. I think, watching on Sunday, because I was not nervous because it's still only week 3, but going into that Bucs game, I was like, right, this is a true test of this Rams team, because it's one thing being like, Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, and this defense, although the key big names are still there's a lot of changes, but it looks fairly solid still until you properly test it against a team that returned all their starters from the Super Bowl win. You don't really know where you are. And even without my Rams goggles on, the Rams were dominant in all 3 phases of the game. So it is going to be a test. I think I'm interested to see how they cope with Kyler Murray on defense, because he's so much more mobile than any of the quarterbacks we've played this season so far. And obviously Tom Brady, that classic sort of pocket passer, it's like chalk and cheese from one week to the other. I think it's going to be a great game, that is for sure.
Good fantasy game.
Great fantasy game, or also terrifying fantasy game.
Yeah.
George, last word on this.
Well, I think I'm going to go Rams. I only say that because I know we got some Rams fans here, Hannah, and I know you're repping them, Dre. But Kyler Murray, I love what he does when he scrambles. Right, those little feet take him far. Like, I know he's only short and he's not the biggest guy, but those little feet do take him far. But he does find himself in those situations where sometimes he does too much, right? And when you're facing guys like Ramsey and Aaron Donald, you can't afford those kind of scrambles, especially if you haven't got the options available. So I don't know. I'm thinking Rams. I think they're a bit more solid, both offense and defense. They're more disciplined, like Hannah said. And at the end of the game, that's going to win you games. I mean, you can't have flag upon flag upon flag. You kill the momentum, you kill the game. You don't win no points. So I'm going Rams.
Let's not forget D-Hop's back this week, by the way. Didn't have him last week.
Yeah, but D-Hop doesn't have Ramsey.
But then we got Kirk, Moore, AJ Green.
Yeah, you
just
do.
But you still got Ramsey, because he gets everywhere.
Ramsey moves.
He can't get across the 4 of them.
Don't worry. They've got enough to put out this fire. Don't worry about that.
Don't count.
Full Rams down. That's why I am. Well, let's move on to a team that not many people were speaking about before the start of the season. Raiders been playing really well, lights out, 3-0. Hannah, do you feel that the Raiders should be taken seriously?
Yes. I mean, last time they started 3-0 was back in 2002. That year, they went to Super Bowl and they lost to a Buccaneers side coached by John Gruden, which I find quite interesting.
Yeah.
Now, look, it is still early. Like, we have to prefix everything with that right now. It's still only 3 weeks played. But there's so much to like about what the Raiders are doing. And it's year 4 now of the John Gruden experience. So it had to start coming good. And it looks like it is. They're climbing up the power rankings, no matter what site you look them on. Derek Carr, he was great again in overtime this week against the Dolphins. I mean, where you look at concerns is the fact that they allowed the Dolphins to put a ton of points on the board before they came back, and then it went to overtime. So it's like you've got to start strong, because you can't be going to overtime 2 weeks out of 3, because you're going to wear yourselves out by playing too much football, especially when we've got an extra regular season game. But they've got the number 1 and overall passing offense. Number 1 overall and passing offense in the league right now, tied first in big plays. They're playing a much more aggressive offense. Derek Carr feels like he's going for it and trying to get more yardage on each play. So it's fun to watch and it's entertaining, which they need to be in Las Vegas. I think we need to take them seriously. I think the defense is improving. Last season, they had the 3rd worst scoring defense, and that has changed. They're only allowing 24 points per game so far this season. Max Crosby is playing lights out on the pass rush. She's tied top of the league for QB hits, along with Chandler Jones at the Cardinals. The defense as a whole, I don't think is quite there yet. And I always come back to that whole, like, if you're looking at Super Bowl, defense wins championships, and their red zone defense isn't great. They're not great against the run. So them playing the Chargers this week, I think Austin Eckler could be having some fun, picking up some fantasy points. But if they can get more consistent across the park on defense and maintain the offense, I mean, my thing is I couldn't see them beating the Chiefs in a playoff game. Do you know what I mean? At this point. But that's only because it's early in the season. So it's how much is fluke and how much of this is real. And they don't play the Chiefs till mid-November, and then they play them twice within a month. So I think if you're going to win long term, if you're going to go deep in the playoffs, you've got to be able to beat the Chiefs. I'm not sure they're quite there yet. So yeah, I think it's early. They're fun to watch. It's much better to watch than they were last season. And I think 100% we should be taking them seriously until we're told not, until we've got a significant reason not to. And enjoy the fact that the AFC is just wide open at the moment, because this is not what we thought would be the case 3 weeks ago.
George, get in there.
Yeah, I mean, honey, you said a lot of good stuff. I mean, you're in a division with the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos, right? You're tied 3-0 at the top of the division with the Broncos, which I didn't see come in. What I did see come in was throwing out the spider Y2 banana that Gruden loves to play all day, every day. You know, after he signed that 100 million 10-year contract, which is kind of unheard of at the time, my expectations weren't that great. And like you said, they didn't start that great. But Carr, as in last season, but Carr, even with his bionic ankle, is doing quite well. You've got Darren Waller, who even when he's not being targeted, attracts so much attention that he drags guys with him, which leaves open guys like Renfro. Ruggs has shown up. Ruggs is, you know, you pay that bill, you want him to get open, you want him to get those big plays, and that's exactly what he's doing. They beat the Ravens, which I didn't see coming. They beat the Steelers, who aren't looking too great, and they beat the Dolphins, who have a mere average defense. I think they're looking good. I mean, you can't take away from the fact that they are 3-0 and Kansas are at the bottom of the division. That is probably going to be short-lived, because we all know what Kansas can do. They have just signed Josh Gordon. Whether or not he stays in the league is another question. But as for the Chargers being Super Bowl contenders, I think it's a little early. I know they're in Las Vegas. You know, at the minute, that roulette machine, they keep winning. They're winning. So I'm impressed so far. I'm looking forward to see what they got. If they can keep up the momentum, then I guess there's no reason not to say that they could be contenders. But for now, it's a little bit too early.
Mr. Morgan, you have the last word on this one.
It depends how you're going to look at it when you say take him seriously. Like, when you're saying take it seriously to win a Super Bowl, then no. Take him seriously to cause take a few scalps, should we say, along the way, then yes. Like, take them seriously. You can't go to the Raiders expecting a win now. I don't think you're going to get that. But I think you both obviously touched on it. The defense still isn't there yet. Surprisingly, what I would say is, like you said, Ruggs, we knew he could do that. We knew he was going to be a deep threat. That connection's now there, or getting better anyway. But yeah, seriously, for a Super Bowl, no. What I would say is well done. They lost Rodney Hudson, I think, which everyone was, and we were delighted that we got him. I think we thought that probably they're going to take a bit of transitional time to get that right. But they've done well, but not seriously for a Super Bowl contender. No, not yet. I think, again, this is a lot, for me, too early in the season to be talking about this. Let's wait till the business end. As we know, we've seen what happens with the Patriots come that time when it's the business end. And let's just see if they've blown up by then. And I generally don't think we'll be having a conversation about them about Super Bowl.
I'm quite impressed with basically the progress that they've had. And Derek Carr's had a lot of pressure on him, especially from his own head coach, where he seemed like he just wanted to get rid of him at any opportunity. And I think he's earned his trust and earned the respect of Gruden. But, I wish them well. But, they're quite entertaining to watch, I must say. Let's move on to the Vikings. Everyone was battering them at the start. Obviously, had a terrible start. But, they've had effectively three really, before the last game where they, a lot of people say surprisingly won against Seattle, 3 close games that were maybe a fumble and a field goal miss away from actually being, having a decent record. But George, do you feel that people were too quick to write off the Vikings?
Straight answer is yes. So I'm a Colts fan, but I love everything the Vikings do. They have so much firepower, from Cook to Jefferson to even KJ Osborne, who nobody saw coming. And they're even looking at Conklin as well, the tight end. Those 2 games that they lost were close games, one by 1 point and one by 3 points. So, technically, you could say if things were slightly tighter, they could be 3-0, but they sit at 1-2, and that's the matter of the fact, right? Kirk has a 74% pass completion rate, which is pretty decent, and 8 touchdowns over 3 games. And I'm loving what I'm seeing. They have all the firepower, they have all the pieces. Zimmer is getting it right. Even if you don't have guys like Dalvin Cook, you have Alexander Mattison, who I actually thought was Cook at one point when he was playing on Sunday. I literally couldn't distinguish between the two. I just think they've got all the pieces in place. The game of football comes down to fine margins. A missed field goal, a tip. So I think people were probably too quick to write him off. Kirk hasn't always been the guy, but I think he's shown so far that he can get the job done. But they have the Browns next, and that's a tough task when you have Myles Garrett on one side and Jadeveon Clowney on the other side. So we'll see how they go. If they beat the Browns, I might take them slightly more seriously. But they're doing well.
Sam, getting it.
Yeah, it's been impressive. And I say we got out of that one by the skin of my teeth, to be honest. And we'll take it. But they are actually an entertaining football team. So to watch, and like you said, obviously Dalvin Cook obviously not being there is a shame. But again, we sit there, next man up, and they've got Matt, like you just said, he's there. He's actually pretty good for fantasy as well. Hopefully anyone did pick him up for sure. Osborne, I like the name because I got him in a couple of waiver claims there as well. Because he's going to be the one to look at, I think, for them. Because again, it's about taking the attention off other players. We've just said that about Thielen. Jefferson, obviously, people are now obviously, he's a big player to obviously look at. So having the 3 men there for them is great for Kirk. I think before Kirk was only Thielen every time. So it was just, who do I give it to? Either hand it off for the run or I've got to try and air it out to Thielen. I think now he's getting more of the weapons. They've addressed, obviously, the cornerback with putting Patrick Peterson in there as well, which I thought was obviously a good pickup, even though we made him look average. But overall, honestly, it is there. They can change it. And I actually do think they'll cause a bit of an upset against the Browns. I actually do, because Baker, for me, is a sort of player that he gets too cocky too soon. And I think he's already at that stage. I've already seen it. I think his head's expanded by a couple of inches. And let's be honest, like you just said there, Myles Garrett does bring them back into the game a hell of a lot. So if they can stop Myles Garrett on there, I don't think they'll get out of jail too often, to be honest. And I actually do think the Vikings will pick themselves up, and they are actually someone as a bit of an underdog to keep an eye on for me.
Hannah, you have the last word on this.
Yeah, I think they flew totally under the radar. I remember over the summer sort of flicking through previews and looking at sort of projections and stuff. And I had the thought, I was like, I think everyone's sleeping on the Vikings a little bit here. I wasn't about to pin my colours to the mast and be like, the Vikings are doing the whole thing. But I was, when you look at what they've got on paper, or even in the summer, you're like, there's some reasons to be optimistic here. And I think everyone in football terms and fantasy football terms has slept on the Vikings. I mean, Kirk Cousins is 4th in QBs in terms of fantasy, put up his 8 touchdown passes already, like George has mentioned. That's the tied most through 3 games in Minnesota history. He's not had an interception yet either. So 8-0 in touchdowns, interceptions. That's impressive. Adam Thielen scored in every game this season. Justin Jefferson had a great game against the Seahawks. I think, no one was paying attention, and that's kind of the best way for teams to operate sometimes, right? It's like low bar, low expectations, and then lo and behold, have a good start to the season, and anything is possible. So, I think we all slept on the Vikings, and more for less.
Why do you guys feel that people don't seem to give respect to the actual Vikings? Is it because of Kirk Cousins? What do you think, guys? What do you think the reason is, Sam?
Kirk Cousins. This is it. That's all it is.
What is the reason? Like, what do you like? Is it stylistically, or is it because people think he's boring? What do you think?
I haven't got his stats to hand, but if you actually watch him, is he pleasing on the eye? No. And every time you watch him, there's definitely an interception coming away. Like every time, I don't think he ever has like a clean game.
Yeah.
He's had 3 this season.
No, but I say previously, the reason people don't take him seriously, he's not a clean QB for me. And that's what it's probably come down to. Yes, it's polished up a little bit, but people are still looking at the historic side of things. Like Brady could have 4 or 5 bad games, but people would still take him seriously. That's because he's got that history of being what we'll say a clean and calculated sort of QB. Kirk Cousins isn't. Stick anyone else in there right now, and I think people would suddenly take them seriously. Even Big Ben, who's not having a good season. I'm saying generally, people would still take him more seriously. And if he moved to the Vikings, people would be like, oh, Big Ben to the Vikings, maybe he can get them to do something. That's what, if Kirk Cousins went to the Steelers, you'd be eating crickets. So
I think it's a thing, like he's kind of got that narrative, hasn't he, that he can't win the big games and he's not the guy when a game's on the line, because he has had some mares in the past. But whilst you're just talking, pulled up some stats, and this is one I was not aware of, but he's currently on a 17-game streak with a 90-plus QB rating. That's the second longest in NFL history, behind Peyton Manning, who had that for 23. So while none of us were paying attention, he's been doing this. But I think it's when they had those big games earlier on in his career, he could not get it done. And I think that stink lingers, doesn't it? And it takes a long time to shake it off.
George, last one.
It's kind of what everyone said, really. I historically have kind of thought the same. He's not when you think of quarterbacks, you don't necessarily think of Kirk Cousins. I mean, Big Ben's not playing well right now, but you think of people like that. You don't really think of Kirk Cousins again. You always I had him in fantasy a couple of seasons ago, and he wasn't great. That's one of the reasons why it always sticks out to me. But you always seem to think, okay, what's coming next? He's a bit of a pocket passer. He does have he's got a little bit of speed. He can move, but you know what's coming with Kirk. Well, traditionally anyway, he's proven us wrong so far. I mean, the fact that he's not had 1 interception is very surprising. I don't know why, but I assumed he just had because it's Kirk Cousins. But I guess that goes to show. And Hannah, that stat is unbelievable. How is that even true? I can't get my head around it.
Yeah, I do feel sorry for Kirk Cousins, but hopefully, he starts getting that little spike back, and I start hearing the you like that back. That little arrogance that he needs back. But speaking of arrogance, there's been a lot of heat coming the way of Matt Naggy. 6 points on the board, a massacre against his quarterback, the one that everyone's been waiting to see. All Bears fans have been like crying out for him to be starting. Some pundits on ESPN, I won't name who, have been saying that it is a setup and it's been done on purpose for him not to be placed, put in that position where he's going to be when he, Matt Nagy's chosen quarterback comes back from injury. There's no question, because of obviously what just happened against the Browns. Now, I'll start with you, Hannah, on this one. Do you feel that it's right for Bears fans or pundits to be calling for Matt Nagy to be replaced?
Yes. On this very pod last week, I sat here and I said, well, not here, but you get the gist, said, when you trade up 9 spots in the draft to get your guy, once you start him, you commit to him. I take it back. If you're not going to adjust your game plan as a head coach in the slightest for a guy with no experience as a starter in the NFL, and who's a very different player to your QB1, then you should not be committing to that guy. It's not fair on him. And frankly, from a Bears fan's perspective, if your head coach isn't going to make the adjustments for the guy that's been pegged as the future, the franchise guy, the one that everyone's getting excited about, do you want him running things? Because I don't think you do. I mean, the offense has got worse in terms of production in the 4 years that he's been in charge. They put a 1.1 yards per play on Sunday, the lowest of any team since 2004. 47 yards total offense, tied the second lowest this millennium. I just think if your offense is going down, you have the chance, like, yes, they'd said going into it that Andy Dalton was still the starter, which I don't think is a great message to be sending to begin with, but that's my opinion. But if you're going to force someone who's such a different player to play the exact same game plan, like, you know, what are you expecting to happen? I mean, there were multiple things going wrong. There's the argument that, is Justin Fields holding onto the ball a little long? Yeah, probably, but he's a rookie quarterback and it takes time to adjust. Look at how the other guys that are rookie QBs are faring this season. It's not like you hit the ground running and you're Justin Herbert, unless you're Justin Herbert. The Browns defense can take a lot of credit as well because they sacked him 9 times. Yep. But I do think that I just think if they lose to the Lions this Sunday, Matt Nagy's seat is going to get increasingly hot. And it's not so much a question of whether he is a bad coach and should be sacked. It's more, is he the right coach to take this team with Justin Fields forward? Because from how he approached Sunday, I think he's the wrong guy for the job.
Sam, get in there.
Yes, I hear the points of sort of hounding Matt Nagy on this. Ryan Pace, the GM, right now, if you look at what he's actually done for the organisation, there's probably not enough coaches in there. I don't know the setup, and if some head coaches don't get involved too much and they allow the GM, or the GM obviously dictates that. Let's not remember, he came in 2015, Ryan Pace. His first pickup was Kevin White. Someone remind me who that is.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Leonard Floyd, Mitch Trubisky. Now, we all know what happened there for them to get Mitch Trubisky. Raekwon Smith, fair enough. Montgomery, okay. Cole Kemet, tight end. And
doing terribly in fantasy, great. I can tell you that.
And now these are just the first picks, and then Justin Fields. Now, you can only work with what you've got, right?
Yeah.
As well. Let's not forget that. So there was a pinnacle moment where their defense was like, oh my God, look at this defense that the Bears have got. Did they then ride the wave? Did they then actually strategically put the draft picks in place? Did they do the trades? Did they take the free agents there to give any coach that was in that seat the right weapons for them to put any sort of team together? I don't think so. It's not all on Ryan Pace. It's not all on Naggy. I think they need a whole shake-up at that organisation, because you can't always put it in this game, this beautiful game that we love. It doesn't just come down to head coach. It is the whole org. And right now, I think Ryan Pace is getting away with this, because how many of you knew who Ryan Pace was? Because not a lot of people actually hear his name, right?
Well, do you know what? You mentioning that brought up a whole load of memories of stuff I was looking at over the summer ahead of this season, and it was very much saying similar things. Like, actually, if you look at the decisions that the GM has made, and that had completely come out of my mind. But yeah, it's the organizational things and what's being done behind the scenes. But looking just at game plan thing, I mean, both guys, maybe get rid of them both.
George, what say you?
I think you've all got good points. But I mean, the one thing I will say is, whenever I hear the name Matt Nagy, the only thing I hear is negative stuff. It's never anything decent, right? We had a similar issue last season with him calling the plays. He then relinquished play calling to Bill Lazor. You could see the instant difference. They weren't great, but there was a difference, right? They changed the way they played. They changed their offense, the formations. Matt Nagy then took play calling back. He then, under the radar, through preseason, claimed that he was going to be calling the plays. I think at least temporarily, before you do, lose your job, I think they should at least give the play calling back to Bill Lazor. Let's see what he can do with the players that we've got. They do have some weapons. I mean, Allen Robinson's a great wide receiver. Montgomery's a 3-4 down back, running back. They do have some weapons, you know. But for him, for head coach to come out after that game where Hannah said it, he was sacked 9 times, and I think he had about 9 or 10 QB hits. For head coach to come out and now say that, you know, all 3 quarterbacks are in the start, are potentially looking to be started the next game, what kind of message does that send? You're talking now Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, and Justin Fields. It doesn't show support. I think, Sam, you've got a point. I think the whole thing needs a culture change. It doesn't seem like it's going in the right direction. He's on the hot seat for sure, without a doubt. You mentioned it's the worst performance in 40 years. And if they do take the loss against the Lions next, I think you could be looking at the curtain call. I really do. It's getting a bit much, I think.
Yeah. I mean, literally, we've been reading reports, and you know, apparently, just like you said, you know, that if they lose to the Lions, then that will be the end of the time with him calling the shots at the Bears. So he'll be watching the television just like you and me watching the games. Now, nice segue again. Segue award again. Hannah, what have we got coming up on Sky?
We've already talked about most of these games, actually, bar one. So we've got the Browns at the Vikings. That's the early game Sunday evening. So give me that Browns run game. Give me that Vikings third overall offense against Myles Garrett and that pass rush. Kevin Stefanski against his old boss, Mike Zimmer. And look, if we are talking about whether people have been overlooking the Vikings, now is the chance to give them some of your attention and like take some notice. Then the 9 o'clock game, it's the Cardinals against the Rams. It's Sam versus Hannah, which is also happening in our fantasy league this week. So there is so much on the line, and we might not be talking this time next week, but I hope we will be. Yeah, I mean, look, this game kind of sells itself, doesn't it, really? They're both unbeaten, both offenses firing. You've got Chandler Jones being a problem. You've got DeAndre Hopkins back. Jalen Ramsey will be getting everywhere. So yeah, and interestingly, and I did briefly mention this earlier, this week, as well as this game, you've also got the Seahawks playing the 49ers, and then next week the Cardinals play the 49ers and the Rams play the Seahawks. So there could be a lot of movement in the NFC West over the next fortnight, and who knows where we will end up, because it's that kind of division, right? And then don't forget, Sunday Night Football is the GOAT Bowl, Bill Belichick against Tom Brady.
I can't wait.
The Bucks at the Patriots, I think it's that way around. Yeah, I mean, interesting one, tasty one. I'm like intrigued what, you know, Bill Belichick knows Tom Brady so well and Rob Gronkowski so well. So what's he going to scheme up? But then those guys know him so well too. And obviously the Patriots struggling a little bit. So interesting. Yeah. And then we round things out on Monday night with the Raiders against the Chargers, which is huge in the AFC West.
Nice.
Some great games.
I was going to ask you guys, who do you guys feel that, you know, obviously with the Bucks and the Patriots playing each other, you know, who do you think this matters more to in this particular game? George, you start.
I'll tell you what, I don't think he'd ever come out and say it, but it's got to be Bill. It has to be Bill. I don't think he'd come out and say it because, you know, he hardly said anything, really. But for Tom Brady to come back, Gronk to come back, and face his master of Bill Belichick against the Patriots, who aren't looking too great with Mac Jones at the minute. There's a lot of pride. There's a lot of ego. You know, there was a whole thing about when Tom Brady wanted to stay, it was who could outlast who. Could Bill Belichick coach for longer, or could Tom Brady play for longer? And now they're coming back for the rivalry game almost. I personally think it's Bill. I think underneath that whole charade of I don't talk, there's a lot of pride and ego. And so there should be. He's a great guy, a great coach, and, you know, he'll go down in history books, but it's got to be Bill.
Quickly, Sam, then Hannah.
I don't think either of them. If I'm being honest, I don't think so. I think Bill's probably like, my 2 sons have left home. It's good to see them doing well. Basically, that's how I see it, and I don't think he does. I think he knew that he was going to lose them. He knew what he had still to do with the Patriots. I don't think he takes it personally. I don't think they left sort of in a disgruntled way that he would then be like determined to beat them. And I think Brady and Gronk, what have they got to prove? I think it'll be a good sort of thing for them to sort of be back there and being around it. So I think we just enjoy the sort of retirement home game, to be honest.
Hannah?
I mean, I kind of agree with you, Sam. I think, you know, Brady kind of settled the argument, didn't he, by winning that Super Bowl ring as to who needed who more. But I actually think, and I think both of them, they've achieved so much and they're in such different places now. Belichick is back in that rebuild mode. So he's aware of that. He knows where his team are now. And these are, the reigning Super Bowl champions. So I think it's really different. I actually maybe disagree with you though, George, because I think a lot of stuff has, if it is going to matter to one of them more, a lot of stuff has come out recently about how, Tom Brady said that Bill Belichick was basically still treating him like he was 20 when he was 40. And that's part of why he looked to leave and all the rest of it. So I think it's maybe for Brady, it's that like, I'm a real grown up. I'm a 44-year-old man. I can win without you. It's almost just been like, yeah, you were the master and I was your student, but now I'm a master too. And I'm away from you now. I don't know. I just wanted to
No, you got a point. You have a point, yeah.
I think, look, it's important to both, but also I think it's more important to the media and fans than either of those two guys individually.
Yeah, we'll be watching them more than anything else. Like every single reaction, any cutaway, we'll be looking at it all. But until then, we will sign off and see you guys next week. Peace.